Well, first I want to give you a brief summary of some of the things that will be taking place at convention other than the delegate assembly. And hopefully you all take these nice posters that our communications team came up with. Has all our speakers on it, as well as a lot of the changes, and you can pass these out in your congregations so that they'll stay up to date on what's happening. Also subscribe to us on Facebook and check our website, convention.mennoniteusa.org. But some of the changes that we will have for Orlando 2017 is we are enhancing our family program. So if you have young children or grandchildren, please bring them. We're trying to be a little bit more creative in what we do with that programming, and also enabling you to get to bed a little bit earlier if you have small children. We have a free night. We will not be going to Disney or any of the other amusement parks, but if you want to do that on your own, we're going to give you plenty of free time to do those things, as well as plenty of time during the day for dinner so that you can go off-site and see some of the sites there in Orlando. Service is a big push that we will be having. In past years, you had to sign up for service projects. This year, we will have a different process. Thankfully to Midnight Mission Network, we're going to enhance our service opportunities to go with our theme, Love is a Verb. So we will have on-site as well as off-site activities, and we hope that all of you will practice love through some type of service in Orlando. The other thing is we want to have a big sense of community. We feel like the convention was a time of family reunion, a time to connect, and we want to provide more opportunities for you to do that in Orlando. And we're going to save you money. So once you're out of debt and you have all that money, extra money from efforts, we're going to make sure that you save that money by offering you 1 day shorter. Convention is 1 day shorter, so you're going to save about 20% on your hotel rooms during that time. Also, the delegate assembly starts on July 6th, so if you don't want to come and worship, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't want to come and worship and participate in the first couple of days of convention, you can sign up to come only for that second half for the delegate assembly at a reduced rate, and of course you don't have to spend money on those hotel rooms. All-inclusive pricing. There used to be a box for t-shirts, for serving projects, for the meal plan. Well, we've done away with all of that. All of it is one price. We're going to give you $20 for your meals. We're going to have meal carts and not a meal plan, so you can partake of a variety of different vendors that will be in our exhibit hall. And so you can either do those things or go off-site, and they're going to be much more affordable than if we had a meal plan like we've had in the past. Some of the things that you've heard about, we want to have more conversation because I read that book by Josh Packard, and I do believe in some of the things that was outlined in that book, so we want to have more conversation. Our middle talks will allow more people to be able to speak and share at convention. We're going to have feature seminars. You see those people listed here on the speaker sheet, but those feature seminars will allow you to have interaction one-on-one with some experts from various fields, like Mark DeVries. He will be coming to resource youth leaders during that time. So he'll do a session, and then he'll have a talk-back session after his main talk. The exhibit hall setup, which I mentioned before, in the past it was just our vendors, but now we're going to put the coffee house in there. We're going to put some children's activities in that room, and we'll also have places for you to sit and eat. And so it'll just be a lot of activity in that exhibit hall and things going on so that you can interact with people, and it'll just be a lively, fun place to be the entire convention. Now, I did have some questions. I know we're going to deal with some tough questions, and I think a lot of people have alluded to some of the challenges when we try to tackle some of the tough issues in life. So I could have asked you about, who's going to heaven, and we probably would have people all over the place with that, and it would just be, it would just probably cause turmoil in this place if we started talking about things like that. But being that I'm from Texas, I'm going to give you the easy question. We're going to talk about barbecue.
Yes.
So my question, and I'll just have a couple of volunteers. What is barbecue? Somebody from this table. What is barbecue?
Hot sauce.
Hot sauce. Okay, hot sauce. Barbecue this table.
Delicious.
It's delicious. Okay, all right. Barbecue this table. Ribs. All right, this table back here. Smoked. All right. So we have a couple of different answers. Now there are 4 recognized types of barbecue in society. Now we have Carolina barbecue, which I personally think is an abomination and should not be characterized as barbecue. But it's pork, it's wet, you know, the wet marinade, and it's a vinegar base. We have Memphis barbecue, which is a little spicy, a little tangy. You know, they focus on pork and ribs. Those are the main ingredients in that type of barbecue. Kansas City barbecue, which I'll let that slide. You know, they're known for their sauce. It's kind of sweet. They have it in the grocery store, and I buy Kansas City barbecue sauce all the time. Pork and chicken are some of the things that are known, well known in Kansas City. Now, of course, the holy grail of barbecue is Texas. If you ever say invite me to a barbecue, don't pull out hot dogs and hamburgers. You have to have beef brisket. It's not a barbecue without a dry rub beef brisket. Now, we may not agree on, you know, from whatever region, we have a different perspective of barbecue, but we can all agree that it's delicious, Kim. Thank you very much. And that's one of our speakers right there. That's why she's coming back. She knows. Barbecue is delicious. We need some heat, you need some smoke, and you need some meat. If you're vegetarian, get out of here. All right? So those are some things that we can agree on when we're talking about barbecue. There are some common elements to barbecue that brings us all together, whether we're from North Carolina, South Carolina, Memphis, or wherever. So now how does that tie into our large group intervention? Well, large group interventions are essentially collaborative inquiries into organizational structures, practices, and processes that are designed to create alignment around strategic direction and system-wide issues. In other words, how do we take all of our differences and bring them together into something meaningful? And the large group intervention process that we are proposing for Orlando, and you've read the proposal, so I'll just kind of go through these things pretty quickly. But it's a way of bringing all those differences together and see how do we fit. You know, what makes it all work and brings it together. Now, the LGI, that term is a very fancy term, but you've heard of this. I know you know what an LGI process. You've probably done it in some form or fashion. These are some variations of that model. So the appreciative inquiry, open spaces, future search, world cafe, participative design, all of those are various forms of large group intervention. And it just varies on how many people you work with. You can do it for a group of 5 or a group of 2,000 like we are proposing for Orlando. So large group interventions, you know, like I said, there are many different models, and we probably won't use a pure model. We will use some type of hybrid, but they share some commonalities, particularly the imperative for inclusiveness and widespread participation in the change process. The purpose of this proposal is for us, is we're going to initiate a change process. You heard it from Carlos. He's going to take a survey with some people. What better opportunity do we have to survey and get input from a large group of people that are invested in the denomination other than our convention? And so, what will be our goals for Orlando? Well, first, figure out how do we want to relate to each other as a church. And these are just some proposals. You may have some better ideas of how we articulate these questions. And the other thing is, what do we want to be known for, and what is important to us? You know, are we delicious as Mennonites? What are the things that are going to capture the essence of who we are? But what better way to do that than to include some of our key stakeholders? We want to make sure the right people are in the room. We want to make sure that, you know, from the earlier presentation, that we are speaking to the necessary bridges that are going to take us forward. So we need young people. We need people of color. We need people from each region. We need our delegates. We need our agency leaders to be a part of this. Anyone that's going to move forward with us as a denomination should be a part of this process. And we want to identify the problematic barriers. You know, there are some things that may be a barrier for me. We've expressed some things at CLC about language and other practices that are problematic maybe for people of color that may not be problematic for other people. So we need to address those things together to learn and understand where it is that we need to go as a church. And so this is part of that meaningful engagement that I talked about when I was doing the book summary of Josh Packer's book, Church Refugees. We need to get a critical mass of people together, not to map out the plan, because you're not going to do that with everyone's opinion, but we want to engage the planners. So me as a staff person of the executive board, we need to hear from the key stakeholders, the people that are invested in this denomination. We need to be engaged with our community so that we can impact the community in a positive way. I talked a little bit about relational leadership, and so this is a chart that I included in the proposal, but I wanted it to be shown in a different way to show that it's not a top-down process with the with the executive board, but it's all of us working together. There's a natural flow to this, that as our stakeholders, our congregation and members live out the vision, that we get feedback that helps shape the vision that we're living out. And the executive board does those things that the church wish we would do. We look, we listen, we convene, and then we create a compelling vision based on what we've heard during various processes, one being possibly this vision conference in Orlando. Things to consider: this approach is not radically different from processes that we've used before, and I named some of them that you may be familiar with. What is different is who is at the table, the nature of the discussion. As a convention planner, the person that gets to hear all of the complaints and all of the wisdom from the participants, people have really come to convention with their dukes up. I mean, if that's appropriate. I mean, ready to fight on this side or that side. And they're ready to fight before anything has happened. We picked our sides immediately when we come to convention. And I'm hoping this process is a way to disarm some of that. Also, the point that we really want to, or that I really think that we should share with people, is that you have the ability to shape the agenda. I think Carlos talked about his process. We don't want to go in with a prepackaged set of things that we want to accomplish. You know, we want to hear what's possible, hear the wisdom of the crowd as we go through this process. And so we want people to really feel like we have the ability to shape what goes on. So, questions about this process, or what you? Yes, ma'am.
Is this going to be scheduled within convention or before convention, or how do you envision that?
Yes, that's a great question. One of the things that we have these pesky little things called bylaws that shape some of the work that we do with the delegate assembly. So we have to work out the logistics. One proposal is that it takes place during the delegate session. This is what the delegate assembly is about. But we may need some approval to figure out how to exactly do that. That's one of the things I know the board is going to have to wrestle with. How do we do it and also keep in line with our bylaws? Yes, ma'am.
So who would be at the table? Delegates or other people, or all of them?
Well, we would like to hear your wisdom on that. But the proposal is that we have those key stakeholders, and I think they're listed in the proposal. We have those key stakeholders in the room. So, how they're invited, and how do we do the table seating. Again, those are details that we really have to flesh out. I'll give you one thing that we're thinking about doing with the youth. Shanna Peachy-Beauchard from David's wife. She's doing our Engage Youth program. And we're going to ask you as conference leaders to help us to find 3 young people, a male, female, and at least one person of color, to participate at the delegate tables as part of the discussion. And we're going to ask our racial ethnic groups to come up with 2 young people, a male and a female. So that's one program that we're going to share some information with, but we hope that those people will be able to participate at the tables. And so that's one idea of how we may shape what's going on at the delegate table.
I know from the reading material that you sent us in advance that other organizations have used something like this in the past.
Yes.
Is there a mechanism being considered for us to pilot on a smaller scale somewhere in the USA world this approach before we go to Orlando, just to kind of test it out and learn from from whatever that experience might be?
I don't think we would necessarily have time to do those things. The CEOs of the agencies have been working on strategic planning. But one thing about that is that they're working at strategic planning at a level that doesn't include as many voices as we have the potential to do at convention. So people have their processes already in place in one aspect or the other. So what we're doing is kind of resetting it a little bit to say, let's look at it from a more holistic standpoint rather than the individual pieces, everybody kind of working in their own agency and institution, but let's work at it holistically to look at the whole. Iris.
Just to respond a little bit, the facilitator that we're looking at has worldwide experience in doing this. She's not a novice, she's done it all over the world. And we will also have a process group, Mennonite process group working with her to help her give the logistics of how the church works in this. So so we're not starting with someone that doesn't know anything about this or has never done it.
Right. We'll get some smart people.
Is this an executive board decision that the process will go? Or are you saying this is how we're going to go in Orlando?
No, you can say right now that I hate it, and we'll probably just
Well,
do something different. I mean, really, we're here to ask for feedback. It's a proposal. A proposal had to come from somewhere. So it's a vision of what can happen. But we're looking for feedback from you all now, and we're going to probably seek feedback from the agencies, because to be successful, it can't be, this is what the executive board wants to do and how we're going to do it. That's not what this process is about. It's about asking you, what do you think is the possibilities are for a process like this, and do you want to be involved in it?
Do you have a sense for how much time will be committed to this?
Well, it's going to take some time. Most of these conferences are 2.5 days from the information that I've read on similar processes. One of the things that I'm recommending is that we do it at the very beginning, that it has to be at the beginning before people kind of started, before we start debating other issues. So it has to be part of the first agenda that we have at the delegate assembly. Let's go here.
Has there been a projection of the anticipation of how many delegates we'll have?
Yes, but that would be through the normal, our normal convention planning process, and we had, 800 last year? Was it 800, Shelley? Around 800, so we're anticipating maybe 100 fewer than that. But then we add people, we could do this with up to 2,000 people.
Is this a process or is it a content? And can you use the process on a variety of agenda?
It depends on what model. Some models are more suited, and I have some background information. There's an actual chart of which model you use for what type of outcome and what number of people. And so as we define our objectives, as we talk with our facilitator, as we define our objective, then we can fine tune what type of model we will use. But it's mostly used when you need to have quick change with a large number of people to create buy-in.
So if needed, so if needed for a reason, there still could be time for some other delegate session, certain issue came up that not be on the table. If somebody brought a resolution or whatever.
If the delegates come up with something else or a different process, then it has to be on the table. Do I think that's probably the wisest use of our, trying to mesh two different processes? Probably won't work. And I say that from, before I was minister, I actually did process improvement. So I've seen people take models and try to mess around with them, and it just doesn't turn out very, very well.
He asked my question.
But I don't know, and I can send out some of the background information. I think the Episcopal Church, I believe, did some similar processes with this. I think they did the Vision Conference. I can't remember which model that they did, but they're all very, very similar.
What role are you anticipating resolutions playing in this delegate?
That's above my pay grade. So I don't know, I would defer to Irvin.
Good question.
Yeah, I understood your question. What role will resolutions play in this? Well, again, as somebody else asked the question, will there be any regular delegate business? And that's a discussion that Patty Shelley and I have been having, because Patty is the moderator. We do think we need a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours, for delegate business, probably at the very end of what process we're talking about. But we wouldn't mix the two processes. There might be some of the same people involved in the two processes. So yes, we actually have a resolution that you have in your document, which was carried over, tabled from the last assembly to be carried here. And so we do anticipate that we will debate that resolution, but probably at the end. Probably not any other resolutions. Maybe, but you'll get to speak to them. Okay, if there are any other resolutions come up, we'll speak about this tomorrow morning, you would have the right to say we should debate that or not. As the CLC, you always need to.
And I think one of the choices this group has to help us think about is, how important is the resolution process. I mean, if we want to come and debate, that's one process. If we want to look at this vision conference, this is a different type of process. And I think that board staff are holding this proposal lightly, so we will look at the wisdom of this group.
Why wouldn't you use this process with resolutions?
Because, well, you could if you want to focus on that. But this vision process will be focused on a resetting of the denomination, or it would be a way to speak into the purposeful plan. I guess that's the best way I can articulate it. So if you want to do it for a specific resolution, then that would be just for that one single item.
So there's a specific agenda that you're going to be dealing with this process?
Yeah.
Okay.
You had a little symbol up there about voting, you didn't mention it. You want to say a word about voting? Back, some slides back, you had a slide for voting.
Right. This is not, this is not about voting. And so sometimes, resolutions, like it or not, some ways have a winner and a loser. So if you're for the resolution, you win. And if you not for it, then you lose. With this is not about winning and losing. It's about creating a vision that we can all rally around. Back to the barbecue analogy. What are those common elements that we can rally around? If you want to go back to Virginia Conference and put some coleslaw in your hamburger, we'll go ahead and do that. We don't do that in Texas.
What would be the agenda that this will do as next year?
What would be the agenda?
Yeah.
It goes back to this. Articulate, this is the current proposal, but it can be reshaped. Articulate a vision for the future structure of Mennonite Church USA and speaking to the central barriers that hold us together as a denomination. We're asking you to be generative. Dave has used that word. This is a generative process. Let's sit down together to see what are those important elements that are holding us together as a denomination, just like Carlos referred to as what NBA is doing, reshaping their mission.
So how might this relate to a vision statement and our purposeful plan?
Well, the purposeful plan, we do have certain priorities that are listed in the purposeful plan. So this will be a time for, instead of us saying, hey, these are the things we think are important as a denomination, what do you think? It's you saying, hey, these are the things we feel are important as a denomination. Put those in the purposeful plan.
So it's not an attempt to create a new purposeful plan or create a new vision statement?
We redo the purposeful plan every biennium, and so we do reshape that. It's already reshaped. So this is an opportunity to reshape things or to affirm. You don't necessarily have to change. We may be already just so perfect. You're doing everything perfect. Just keep doing what you're doing, and then we can go vote on resolutions.
You have given examples in the past of exactly one thing we want to all do together, like across agencies.
Right. One of the examples I used is if we said we as a denomination feel that ministry to women is important. That's the thing that speaks most loudly to us as a organization plan. We're most happy about as a denomination. And so Everest can say, okay, well, let's set up programs that we can provide financial assistance to women. We can do financial education. MEA can say, well, let's include more women authors in our process, or books that deal with things that are of interest to women. Mennonite Education Aid, did I say that? Mental Media, I meant Mental Media. You know, the executive board, where we can put more money towards Mennonite women or women in leadership. Those are programs that we really need to staff fully and devote more time and energy. So those are that's how we could possibly react to the things that the delegates or that body say are important.
So what I've understood about the process, Glenn, is that this, what happens at Assembly will be a generative process. It will identify the things we need to be working on, and then there will need to be a whole process of engaging the different parts of the church to develop the strategic initiatives to actually implement the ideas that are coming from the delegates, right?
Yes, exactly. And typically with these processes, you have the large group process, and then you have 3 or 4 additional smaller summits that are more specific, that where staff will take what they've heard and then develop a plan to execute those things. Like I said, the agencies, the Governor's Council has already met and started thinking about what do we need to do strategically to carry our denomination in the future. This is just saying, hey, let's, before we get too far down the road, let's hear from the voices, and they will help us shape the strategy that we will continue to use going forward. Yeah, so people have already tried to kind of do strategic planning, but we just want to bring all those pieces together and actually try to respond in a way that is a little bit more relational, a little bit more transparent.
Just affirm what you are doing. I think 2 things that I keep hearing this time that we're together is that we are to maybe wait and test some things, and the other thing I hear is we need to get unstuck. And so I would say, let's use this as a, we talk about pilot kinds of things. I think it's a great way to get us unstuck, and it's a great way to test things and move us forward. So the old maybe hasn't worked, and so I have what we're doing. I think it's a great thing. Speaking to the key stakeholders, could you go to the second last slide?
Yeah. Oh, right here?
That, no. Back. Right there.
Yeah.
From the congregations that have withdrawn from Allegheny Conference, I hear consistently from the pastors of those congregations that they feel they are not at the table, they don't like the nature of the discussions we've been having, and they've had no ability to shape the agenda. So I'm burdened by the pastors not being listed among the key stakeholders. I think our called leaders have been left outside of the discussion in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I guess I would make an assumption that most delegates are pastors, so maybe that's a bad assumption. But that's the feedback that we need to hear, because we haven't made this is not in stone, it's in pudding, so we can add that feedback. I think that's good feedback.
Will they have the opportunity to table to discuss your feedback?
Oh yeah, we have these are the. Well, we have a couple more questions. We have some questions we want you all to give us feedback on.
Would it be correct to say that this process is one that really values those people who are verbal, who think on their feet, and are able to grasp the situation kind of immediately, as opposed to those who maybe are more reluctant to verbalize, or maybe need to think on it, sleep on it, let it percolate a little bit before they contribute?
No, I think that if we do our job as leaders, there will be so much preparation ahead of time where people will come to the discussion prepared. And we already do some of this. It's a familiar setting. It's our round table, so it will be a series of small groups. It won't be 2,000 people trying to share at the same time. It will actually be small table groups that are part of this process, and in a way of feeding that table responses back to the whole. So it's like I said, it's nothing radically different from what we've done before. It's just bringing in more voices and holding that agenda a little bit more lightly.
This is a related question. Has there been thought to how conversation